Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Matthew 23. We went through Matthew 22 last time. Talked a little bit about the parable of the wedding feast. So, that's pretty cool. And something we're going to read in 23 can kind of go along with that as well. So we'll talk about that. But I hope you guys are doing good. Again, if you got any prayer requests, you can put them down in the comments. I would love to pray about them. I'm sure other people that read them might love to pray about them. But let's get into it. So Matthew 23, verse 1. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The scribes and Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. So do and observe whatever they tell you, but not the works they do. For they preach, but do not practice. They tie up heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to move them with their finger. They do all their deeds to be seen by others, for they make their phylacteries broad and their fringes long." I wanted to stop there. I had to figure out what some of this was. So phylacteries hold texts, and fringes signify authority. So by making their phylacteries broad, it was that they had a lot of texts, and fringes long was to signify their authority. So they knew a lot, they had a lot of authority. They love the place of honor at feasts, and the best seats in the synagogues, and greetings in the marketplaces, and being called rabbi by others. But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brothers. And call no man your father on earth, for you have one Father, who is in heaven. Neither be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Christ. The greatest among you shall be your servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. So that was the first part before we get into the 7 woes. So I gather that pretty much what he's saying here is to do what the scribes and Pharisees tell you, but do not do what they do. We're called to do better. He's telling everyone that's listening to do better than the scribes and Pharisees. And he's telling everyone that there's one instructor, himself, Jesus, the Christ. There's one Father in heaven, and that we're all brothers and we're all sisters in Christ. And that's why it doesn't make sense when certain churches like to put people up in higher positions. It makes no sense. Jesus is the high priest. He sits above all. He is all of our teacher. There's no one on earth anymore that's higher than anybody else. We're all on the same level. We all suck. And Jesus makes us not suck. But nobody's better than anybody else. Some of us might be on a different spiritual level of maturity, but nobody is better enough to wear this nice shiny robe and say that we're a father over everyone else. That doesn't make any sense. Jesus says he is the only one. And so that's what's true. Now we're going to get into the woes of the Pharisees. Jesus says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces, for you neither enter yourselves, nor allow those who would enter to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you travel across sea and land to make a single proselyte, and when he becomes a proselyte, you make him twice as much a child of hell as yourselves. Woe to you, blind guides! who say, "If anyone swears by the temple, it is nothing. But if anyone swears by the gold of the temple, he is bound by his oath." You blind fools! For which is greater, the gold or the temple that has made the gold sacred? And you say, "If anyone swears by the altar, it is nothing. But if anyone swears by the gift that is on the altar, he is bound by his oath." You blind men! For which is greater, the gift or the altar that makes the gift sacred? So whoever swears by the altar swears by it and by everything on it. And whoever swears by the temple swears by it and by him who dwells in it. And whoever swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits upon it. And woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. These you ought to have done, without neglecting the others. You blind guides, straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and the plate, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and the plate, that the outside may also be clean. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but within are full of dead people's bones and all unrighteousness, uncleanness. So you also outwardly appear righteous to others, but within you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, saying, "If we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets." Thus you witness against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up, then, the measure of your fathers. You serpents, you brood of vipers, how are you to escape the sentence of hell? Therefore, I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, and some you will flog in your synagogues and persecute from town to town, so that on you may come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah the son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. Truly, I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. Basically what he's saying is, woe means judgment. So like, judgment's going to come upon these people that are out here saying certain things that aren't true and making God out to be a way that he really is not, making it impossible for people to be able to come to heaven. The scribes and Pharisees took the law and they made it what it was not, so that only they could be perfect and righteous. But it was just, the robes and the fringes and all this other stuff that made them only look righteous. And they would stand there and pray long prayers in public to make it seem like they're getting more out of it. But really, what Jesus said just now is they're like whitewashed tombs, who outwardly appear beautiful, but inwardly are full of dead people's bones, because while they looked holy and perfect, they were spiritually dead. So the goal is to do what they say, but not as they do. But even better yet, just do what Jesus says and do what he does without the belief that doing those things saves you. Do what Jesus does and says with the thought that I want to do this because I'm saved by Jesus, who just graciously forgiven me of all my sins. That's it. But all these people in church that go one Sunday, they don't serve, they're a pew warmer, and they only go for that 1 hour. And then because they go to church, they're tricked in their mind thinking that that's what saves them and gets them into heaven. Church attendance doesn't save you. Serving in the church doesn't save you. But those things are what saved people want to do. And even better yet, saved people will want to serve even more and do more for their church, in their church, and outside of their church. Saved people just want to see other people get saved. And they want to love people the right way, the way Jesus tells us to. But the scribes and Pharisees, they just want the glory. They want the honor. And that's what Jesus is saying. And then there's this little last bit there. "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often would I have gathered your children together, as a hen gathers her brood under her wings? And you were not willing. See, your house is left to the desolate. For I tell you, you will not see me again, until you say, 'Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.'" You know, I've been reading this, and I think I read a psalm that said, "Blessed is the man who comes in the name of the Lord," or it was in Isaiah or the Proverbs. I can't remember which one I was reading, because I've been reading a lot lately. But I've had that "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord" on my mind over and over. It's a really good verse. But, yeah. Pretty much, this chapter was Jesus, I don't know if you call it nagging, rebuking. Jesus correcting and lecturing the scribes and Pharisees on what they're doing wrong. Honestly, to do better, you just start letting him work on you. And you drop your fancy robes and whatever makes you look perfect and say, "You know what, you're right. Help me to do better." And Jesus would do that. But they don't want to do that. They think Jesus is some crazy dude, and they hate him for calling them out on true things. And now they want to kill him. So, and the world hasn't changed. There's a lot of people that are trying to teach Jesus' ways, teach truth. And there's so much deceit in the world that the world will just kill you. Look at Charlie Kirk. He may have not been the greatest guy, but nobody's perfect. But he still preached Jesus is the way. He still taught things that were from the Bible. And he got sniped. And he's not the only one. There are so many Christians overseas in other countries that are actually getting persecuted. Like really persecuted to the point of death. Like, I guess there's a lot going on in Nigeria. But I remember something about like 70 Christians in Africa a while back. There's just so many people getting killed for their faith in Jesus, which is prophesied. But it makes it scary. However, as scary as it may be, we need to stand firm in our faith. And we need to be out there doing the things that this tells us to do. And I'm in my car talking to a camera and to the audience behind the screen, not going out there. And some of you guys aren't going out there. And we need to do better as the church. You got people like Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro, Sean Foyt, Billy Graham was awesome. We need to be like them and better than them. But we need to take the first step to allow God to use us in that way if we're called. Not just sit here. We need to be out there. I need to be out there. But despite what I think, none of us should look perfect while the inside of us is dirty. We need to allow Jesus to clean us so we can actually be clean with what really cleans us, and that was the blood that he shed on that cross. Anyway, there was a lot there. And next, the title says, Jesus foretells destruction of the temple and signs of the end of the age. So there's some pretty interesting things coming up, and we're almost to the end of Matthew, but yeah, there's a lot there. But I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. I thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're ready, to continue. And I hope you guys stay blessed. Thank you very much.